Over the last several decades, our two countries became strangers. But today, I can tell you that we always remained hopeful about the people of this country, about you.
The United States has been staunch in its support of the democracy movement in Burma, and we are confident that this support will continue through the difficult years that lie ahead.
You gave us hope, and we bore witness to your courage.
The most difficult time in any transition is when we think that success is in sight.
You border the most populated nations on the planet.
We have to be very careful that we are not lured by a mirage of success and that we are working towards genuine success for our people.
And it must reclaim its greatness because the future of this country will be determined by the education of its youth.
This is Zaw Lin Thu, a 10-year-old boy from Myanmar, the nation formerly called Burma. He begins his day like many schoolboys here with a filling and fishy broth known as mohinga. Zaw Lin Thu was born under tyranny, as were his parents, as were his grandparents. He hails from Yangon, a city built by British colonialists and more recently controlled by Myanmar's military regime. Under 5 decades of oppressive rule, this country was driven into the ground. Until recently, many spoke of Myanmar as a lost cause, a nation isolated and stuck in darkness. All of that is changing rapidly. Zaw Lin Thu belongs to the first generation in decades that could grow up in a freer, more modern society. In 2011, the military regime handed power to a parliament under its control. This great experiment with democracy has come with grand promises to stop locking away those who dare to criticize, to stop hoarding the nation's wealth, to end warfare in the jungles. Not too long ago, the White House called Myanmar an outpost of tyranny. Now, President Barack Obama is among the chorus of voices telling Myanmar's people, now you can taste freedom.
Freedom is not an abstract idea. Freedom is the very thing that makes human progress possible. Freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And now you can see it. You can taste freedom.
Though Zaw Lin Thu is too young to understand, great struggles are underway to realize these promises for his generation and avoid the perils of failed democracy. On a good day, 12-year-old Myanmar earns $3 searching for bottles in the slums of Yangon. She works 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. Orphaned by her parents, she lives with a sick grandmother in a bamboo shack on stilts above a swamp. She relies on her meager earnings to buy food and medicine. But competition among child scavengers is fierce. Experts say 1/3 of Myanmar's children work, making it one of the worst nations in the world when it comes to child labor. Some scavenge the streets for bottles. Others toil in sweatshops. Many more hustle in restaurants and cafes. After decades of isolation, Myanmar is set to boom. Foreign investment is flooding into an economy that, according to the government, may triple in a few short years. But companies who set up shop here will discover that much of the workforce has yet to grow up.
Currently, if we look around Myanmar, you will see children in the fishing industry, you will see children working on farms, you will see children in tea shops of various ages working, And I don't think that'll change dramatically over the next couple of years, but what will change is the entry of large corporations and the growth of the private sector.
Those corporations will encounter kids like Little King, a child who does the work of men. He's been a dock worker since the age of 11. He moves bananas and coconuts from boat to boat on rivers that connect Yangon to the rest of the country. After his father's death, Little King became the primary breadwinner in his family. The $3 he earns each day help feed his mother and keep his sisters in school. Little King went to school for a few years before dropping out. He has little to show for it. When the sun sets and Myanmar has not returned home from collecting trash, her grandmother assumes the worst. School or starvation. For Myanmar's family, there isn't much of a choice. In Zaw Lin Thu's world, the sight of men and children worked to the bone is common. Myanmar has been dysfunctional for so long that poverty is the norm. But such desperation seems especially tragic in a country so rich in natural resources. Its rice paddies are among the region's most fertile. Its hills are rich in jade and gold, treasures once used to build ancient, glittering empires across its plains. Yet, this natural bounty has not been used to fund the schools and hospitals Myanmar so desperately needs. 400 miles upriver from Zaw Lin Thu's home, a struggle is underway at Myanmar's largest mine. Great wealth in the form of copper lies beneath this land. But that wealth has mostly enriched a small circle of military elites and their Chinese mining partners. The peasants who inhabit those destroyed lands are desperately poor, and so they survive by stealing mine waste under the threat of beatings.
Oh.
15-year-old Coco Aung shares a bed with his family in a bamboo shack surrounded by pools of acid in the shadow of Myanmar's largest copper mine. His family once farmed this land, but now the mine uses it as a dumping site. Today, Coco Aung works 7 days a week, making copper from earth he steals from the billion-dollar mine in his backyard. Although the mine generates hundreds of millions per year, if they're lucky, he and his father together earn $5 a week from work. It takes a nasty toll on their health. The entire village survives of this dust. Like a trail of ants, villagers scramble up and down the hillside day after day, stealing bags of copper-rich earth.
ပြင်ရေကွက်လည်းမရှိဘူးရာကွက်လည်းမရှိဘူးဆိုတော့လှုပ်စားရမှာမရှိတာဒီလုပ်ငန်းမရှိ
At any moment, even this could be taken away.
ဒုက္ခရောက်တယ်ဆိုတာခုသူတို့တောင်ကြီးတွေဖြိုတယ်တောင်ကြီးဖြိုတော့ဒီဘက်မှာဆွင့်ပြစ်မယ်ဆိုတော့ဟိုဟာနေတွေပါရွှေ့ရမယ်ပေါ့အဲ့လိုကိုပြီမှာကိုနေရတာတော့ကောင်းပါတယ်အမေကြိုက်တာတော့ဒီလိုအခုလိုနေရာမျိုးတော့မနေချင်ဘူးဒါကျွန်တော်ရဲ့ဘဝပဲ
Just up the road from this bleak moonscape, the mine seeks to expand its operation by destroying another copper-rich mountain. The locals have had enough. They fear more children will become like Koko Aung. A resistance made up of peasants and monks are seizing their newly promised freedoms to take on military untouchables who control the mines. But they have suffered for their defiance. Smoke grenades with white phosphorus. That's how the Myanmar government responded to a peaceful protest here. The crackdown in late 2012 severely burnt over 100 monks and civilians who gathered outside the Wambao copper mine offices. Their scars are healing, but the memories are still raw. Pinya Sara is just 16 years old. He was among those wounded in the crackdown. His friends also bear scars from the fire bombing. Riot police launched the attack around 3 a.m. As protesters slept, white phosphorus rained down. U Taji arrived from Yangon to help reinforce the protests. Some protesters have lingered at the site since the attack. It is a lonely battle. Lebadao Mountain holds one of the largest untapped copper deposits in the world. The mine is operated as a joint venture between a Chinese state-owned weapons company and Myanmar's largest military conglomerate. To access the copper, they must grind the mountain into a quarry. Piles of removed earth can already be seen throughout the area. But for people here, the mountain is a treasured landmark. Poet U Amau lives in Mongyua, a nearby city.
We don't have so many mountains around here. So what do we have? We love them very much. Just like parents who have only 1 or 2 sons. They will lose their land. They will lose their village. They will lose even their rights to education and worship. We see environmental risks in this enterprise. We see great danger to the existence of our city, our river, even our own country.
Many say the government pressured them into taking payouts for their lands. Others say their drinking water has been spoiled. Officials have denied the claims, insisting the mine is offering jobs to locals and building new villages to replace the ones they started to bury. As the complaints mount, Myanmar's new protest freedoms are put to the test. So far, those rights only seem to exist in politicians' speeches, says U Ting Ta U, a senior member of the Lawyers Network.
we are shocked. They always shouting rule of law. So we don't expect this severe attack, like as the so-called civilian government. But it's not strange, because monks, students, civilians, even children are brutally killed in Myanmar history.
The government initially denied that white phosphorus was used, but U Thein Than Un's network documented evidence of toxic chemicals. Their findings prompted an investigation led by Nobel Peace Prize laureate Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, who is widely seen as a chief defender of people's rights in the face of government oppression. Her report backed the mine. She insisted its huge profits could be used to reverse the environmental damage and bring more prosperity to locals. This response has crushed villagers who once idolized the opposition leader they call Auntie or Mother Sue. Sanda, a 32-year-old merchant living on the outskirts of the mine, was there the day Daw Suu came to ease unrest among the villagers. Others say Daw Suu's support of the mine is not surprising. After all, she has joined the government as a member of parliament. Opposing the mine would anger China, as well as powerful ex-generals who could reverse the country's reforms.
You see, our country had been in darkness for so many years. We hoped to find somebody to take us out of the darkness. And we thought she was the one.
Some protesters have been sentenced to hard labor. The fact that most are still free is a testament to the country's move away from all-out tyranny. But their treatment highlights just how far the country still has to go. Some here still hold out hope that the government will address their concerns and fulfill their promises of reform. But for others, hope has been another casualty of the ongoing standoff. Back in Yangon, Zaw Lin Thu's world is dazzling in its diversity. On the surface, the city appears harmonious, and for the most part, people coexist. Scratch that surface, however, and you will see a nation divided. For much of the outside world and city dwellers like Zaw Lin Thu, only a small portion of Myanmar is visible. Tourists flooding into the country are herded through the stable Buddhist-dominated central region full of shimmering temples. But nibbling at the edges, in places the state calls black zones, are dozens of militias formed along ethnic lines. For decades, they have attempted to fend off domination of their native lands. Myanmar's government has pledged to pursue peace with these groups. promises that have so far proven difficult to keep. In Myanmar's far north, church hymns welcome the faithful. But in a nearby attic, 2 heroin users are seeking salvation through the needle. The choir's singing echoes through the room as the drugs swim into the bloodstream. Heroin is hardly new here, but in recent years, the drug has appeared to spread practically unchecked by authorities. The epidemic has given rise to a conspiracy theory. Many locals are now convinced heroin is being used as a weapon against their people, a tool to pacify rebellious youth and gain greater control of their land.
Out by my side, could not be all over. A women come, no? Through out by my Kilo Elula, Owen Candy, or am I through that generation to put up to them loop Yama, a chimican, which in a lot of born.
This is Kachin State, opium country. Poppies have grown here for centuries. It is also a battlefield contested for decades by the military and native guerrillas. It is a world apart from mainstream Myanmar. The Kachins were Christianized by American missionaries in the 1800s. They were armed and trained by the US military to fight in World War II. They are still fighting today against a military seeking control of their native land. That military, dominated by the Buddhist Burmese, has never fully subdued the Kachins. Much of this terrain is controlled by the Kachin Independence Army, a guerrilla force that funds its resistance by taxing the borderlands. Battles often center around Kachin State's lucrative mines.
Hello, Muye Sewa Damari Nyalade. Nyalade, Dika Jonia, Ledruye, Yati Muta, the Seaboy Lokan, the Shimo Robo, no, Jose Moro, Seaboy Lokan, Dore Chema, Arimori, Alomaro, the Muye Sewa Shini, the Jamulo Alon, Muye Sewa Dama Pit, Tuajare Lube, Dilube, Jatia, no, Dilube, Twijoya, Leshi Chini, Yap.
Aja, a former rock musician, runs a jungle rehab camp in the hills beyond Myitkyina, Kachin State's capital. He is a self-described faith healer. In the absence of medicine or trained psychiatrists, he fights heroin addiction with sing-alongs and sermons. His camp is constantly full as more men drift back from the drug-infested mines.
I mean, we saw the Hiroshima, Nasulam A1 or Shannon or Corona, Hello, Swan, that's a those are teacher, Michina Mugama, Lumshi. The Michina Mu Totwara, Mupin by Seno, Romial Mushi. That's one of your such evils and your corner or Sama Suyashima, some those were Shida.
Multiple sources, including a former senior narcotics officer, confirmed that police allow heroin to flow into Kachin State and profit greatly from the traffickers who bribe them. While this is not government policy per se, central authorities seem to show little concern for a society they have battled for decades. The region is overwhelmed by the drug's tragic consequences. 34-year-old Latoy kicked heroin 1 year ago, but his body is still weakened by HIV. Many addicts, he says, don't know the virus can pass through shared needles.
Di chúng jabu India sebuah sa, memang jaro jabu, joro aja di nama puan ini metiang, di lin sesa no di muka orang memang elmu metiang, aja joro belum, jual di luar joro dah ini aja, jaro jabu ni joro.
Most Kachin addicts looking to quit must resort to crowded and ill-equipped Bible camps. Reverend Laluk Gyun Kong runs one of the largest.
The paying pizza do.ကျွန်တော်ဒီတော့ဒီကချင်ကဒေါ်လာရဲ့တက်တယ်လေတော်ရန်ရဲ့အင်အားတွေနည်းနိုင်တဲ့လောက်နည်းသွားအောင်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒါတခုပါတယ်ပြီးတော့ဒီမှာသူတို့ဘာပြောမလဲဒီဥပဒေကိုတင်းတင်းကြပ်ကြပ်မလုပ်ဘူးလေ
Addicts who drift into Bible rehab camps face a grueling withdrawal with plenty of prayer but little medicine. They are often forced to go cold turkey inside a cage to stop them from fleeing back to their dealers. Escapees are tracked down and dragged back. But Jason Eli, head of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in Myanmar, says cage therapy actually worsens the addict's suffering.
The response is not to lock them in a room or a cage and expect that miraculously they will be healed. That's just not reality. That's just not the way that you respond to drug dependence. And how can you treat another human being that way?
As for the Kachin conspiracy theory, he says it's just that, a theory.
Well, I think this is a rumor that you hear in many areas of conflict where you have a country that has national forces against nationalistic forces. I would be very surprised if it was true. What I would say is that what you should do is talk to drug users and find out.
Because the most of the things we do, but don't say the same. Who look in the bones and who pitch now, say them as she did a lumia. I had a but don't say Suya the kind of bones and lower on. I leave bones and John to look when we have a general Gayagashi same one that through say Tanjano, Piano, the Indian book, and you could you tell
I don't know the Kachin Lumudi go Bala, the Bala, Shinny in the attention in the Mapama. Told me out to the Lola Bono. I bet the Naga, the Lumio, Monichin, Vadalu Pilana Bono. Through the policy of Mabono, General Godi, Amuto, and Lopo. Through season of Chite.
In much of Myanmar, there is welcome news. The nation's long spell of totalitarian rule appears to be receding. But the view from Kachin State, poor, isolated and under heroin's deadly spell, remains bleak. For now, Zaw Lin Thu is oblivious to the challenges facing his nation. He's still a child, only vaguely aware that he is lucky to be in school and not stuck in a polluted mine or fending for himself on the streets. But as Zaw Lin Thu ages, he will no longer be shielded from the world. In this crumbling landscape, he may come of age in a brighter Myanmar, a place where men can speak their minds without fear of imprisonment, where mothers do not face a choice between schooling their children or starving, where ethnic groups view one another as equals instead of battlefield rivals. But that can happen only if the government's grand promises come true. There is still a long way to go. Tyranny does not unravel overnight.